Well, good morning to you all. Thank you, Marty, for that introduction, and I'm very pleased to be here this morning to tell you a little bit about what Google is up to when it comes to energy. I think it's interesting that the lead-off panel in an energy conference is coming from Oracle and Google. I think it kind of gives you a sense about where perhaps at least part of the energy industry is headed, and that is indeed the power of information. And maybe together, companies like Google and Oracle and many others could finally make energy efficiency sexy. I thought this captured the state of play in our country and the world pretty well. The future is not what it used to be in so many ways when it comes to our economy, our environment, our security. We are at this amazingly complicated and difficult moment. And it is indeed a difficult moment, but I like what Rahm Emanuel, the White House Chief of Staff, said recently, which was that a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. We have so many challenges, but when it comes to getting our energy house in order, I think it's a real opportunity. We have people who, and one of those big bills for many, many people are their energy bills. So I think this is a real opportunity to make some serious change in the way we make and use energy. And I want to talk a little bit this morning about what Google's up to in that realm. And most importantly, what we think the power of information can mean to energy efficiency and to renewable energy. I like what Amory Lovins said a long time ago. All people want is cold beer and hot showers. We're interested in the results of energy use, not the energy itself. If we can use less, if it can come from greener sources, all the better. That's a choice we make. But they want the service. And if we could focus on that, providing the service and doing it efficiently and doing it in a greener manner, we're all going to be much further ahead as a result. This is the way I think about a more sustainable energy future. I think too often we each work in our little corner of the energy world. Some people focus on technologies. Some people pursue policy. Some people are in the finance world. Until we bring all of those things together in our work lives, as we train students, the next generation of leaders in this industry, we've got to pull these things together. And when we do, when we explore those intersections between technology and policy, between policy and finance, I think we're going to move this whole industry forward a lot faster and a lot more effectively. One more quote. I love this from Lord Kelvin. If you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. And I think that's quite fundamental, and I think that's part of the reason that bringing information to an industry that for so long has needed more of it, becomes so critical. So this is the state of your electric bill in most places. Once a month you get this thing in the mail. You don't learn a whole lot from it. The single most important piece of information you probably learn is how much you owe and then when the check is due. But consider the lowly grocery store. Imagine walking down an aisle in a grocery store and not seeing any prices on the things you buy. Imagine getting to the checkout counter and not seeing your bill tallied. Imagine all you got once a month for your food was a single number that you owed to the grocery store. I don't think that would work well for people. I don't think that would inform their choices. I don't think that would allow them to take advantage of savings opportunities, allow them to change the mix of their food, allow them to really take control of a vital part of their lives, which is the food they eat. We think we need to do the same thing when it comes to energy. And part of that is building a smarter grid. This term smart grid means so many things to so many people. To me, it simply means bringing information technology to the energy grid and applying it in an effective way. And to do that, we've got to drive adoption of smart meters or in-home devices to allow people to better manage their energy use. We've got to put consumers first. And part of that is ensuring that people have real-time access to their energy information. We've gone for too long without that. We think that's a fundamental aspect of the change that's needed in this industry. And we've got to promote open standards. We've got to give the software writers the ability to write applications to help people in all sorts of different ways when it comes to their energy use. It's got to be an open system, an open architecture, open protocols, so that all these applications that the software writers can provide to people are there, available, and helpful. So as you just heard, we recently announced at Google that we're developing a product called Power Meter. And Power Meter, when it's introduced for commercial use, will be a free, downloadable piece of software that you can either use on your laptop, on your smartphone, in any number of configurations. It's what's called an iGoogle gadget, as some of you may know. Free, downloadable, use it on your laptop, use it on your cell phone. And it's going to allow you to monitor your energy use in your home. A number of us at Google have installed these in our home. We have an in-home device that attaches to the fuse box in the house that sends real-time information that I now can get on my laptop and on my cell phone. I live out in California, and fairly soon, as you heard from the previous speaker, PG&E is going to start installing smart meters. That will probably be an even more effective way, a more effective piece of hardware potentially to allow me to use this kind of software to get that data, again, on my laptop or on my cell phone. So what do I learn? Well, it's an extraordinary thing that first time you open up your laptop or look on your phone and you can see in real time what your energy use is. And you begin to understand what these peaks and valleys in your own energy use are. You know, when the dryer comes on, what that looks like. The very regular on and off of your refrigerator. The heater motor, the motor in your furnace, when that clicks on. Your TV, a hair dryer, take a look at that sometime, and the peak you get for a few minutes. And this all becomes pretty simple to understand, and you get a real fundamental understanding of what is happening. Excuse me. And then, if you can assemble this information over a day, over a month, over a year, you can really give people the kind of information that's useful in driving changes in their behavior. How much did I use last hour? How much did I use this past day? How do I compare to my neighbors, people in similar-sized homes or people I work with? It becomes quite powerful. And what we've learned is that from a number of studies all over the world is that when you get people information about their energy use, it does change their behavior, simply their behavior. And these studies show that you'll see reductions in electricity use on the order of 5 to 15%, pretty reliably. And that's based on behavioral changes primarily. People realizing they didn't turn the light off, people realizing they could make a change in the operation of an appliance, any number of things. So one of our Google colleagues installed a power meter in his home. This is the data before he installed it, and you can see it was a very significant energy-using home. He discovered a number of things about his house. One was that he had an inefficient refrigerator in his kitchen and an even more inefficient refrigerator operating in his garage. He found out the incentives for replacing refrigerators that exist. He went out and replaced those, did a number of other things to his home, and saw a very significant drop. And another colleague who discovered that her pool pump had been operating nonstop for a number of years. That was quite a revelation. Certainly didn't need to be operating nonstop for a number of years. I got on here on my laptop a few weeks ago, saw a little peak in my own energy use, and I realized I think that was my daughter with her lights on in her bedroom. I called her up. She didn't like that, actually. But it gives you a sense about what you can learn about these sorts of things in real time and how behavioral changes can really make a difference. So what about the lowly refrigerator? This is one of my favorite lines from when I was Assistant Secretary of Energy, and we were issuing new standards for refrigerators. You can see where they were in the early 70s, using almost 2,000 kilowatt hours a year of electricity. Decade by decade, standards were set, technologies were advanced, and as of 2001, the standard said the refrigerator in the United States should not use more than 450 kilowatt hours a year of electricity. That's an extraordinary accomplishment. Our announcement came a week after President Clinton's second inaugural address, where he talked about building a bridge to the 21st century. I said to the Secretary of Energy, why don't we announce we're building a bridge to the 21st century? It was definitely my greatest moment as a bureaucrat. Quote of the week in Newsweek, prominent coverage in the New York Times. Vice President Gore started to use the line. But more seriously, if you can take technology advances like this, underlay them with good, strong standards, and now get people the information about what's really causing high energy use in their homes, such as the refrigerator, then we may have finally put together a formula that can really change behavior and really get us to the opportunities with energy efficiency. So we start with energy information, power meter, and lots of other pieces of software that people are developing are going to help with that. But then we can help people actually make serious investments in their homes and get to even greater savings. Replace that refrigerator, add that insulation, think about how you operate the air conditioner. If it's an old one, replace it, and then go from there to demand response. I love this article I saw in the Wall Street Journal the other day. Packing Heat, the firepower of the lowly caulk gun, talked about the opportunities in home energy efficiency and how as we get people this information, as we get them an understanding of what they can do in their home as a result of analysis and monitoring, we can really cause some very, very cost-effective changes to be made in their energy use. So all of this then raises the next big device that's going to enter your home one of these years, which is the electric car. And at Google, we built a fleet of these a couple of years ago. They were aftermarket Ford Escapes and Toyota Priuses. And these were converted aftermarket, and we began to test how they worked, began to plug them into the grid, did various experiments. Could we, in fact, send electricity from these cars back to the grid? That worked. Could we begin to monitor their energy use? And we did that. And we showed that the Ford Escapes got, in real-world driving, about 50 miles per gallon. The Toyota Priuses were up around 90 miles per gallon. So there's extraordinary opportunity. And if you plug this car into a smart home, a home that's talking to the grid all the time, you might charge this at the right time of the day, for example, at night, rather than the wrong time of the day, for example, on a hot day in July when the grid is maxing out. And that's just the beginning of the integration of a smart car into a smart home, into a smart grid. It's very exciting. Turning quickly to the other side of the equation. First, we've talked a little bit about what we and others are doing to help people save energy, to get their arms around the information that's so vital to that. The second is, how do we, in fact, move cleaner energy sources into greater use? And what's the power of information there? As you heard earlier, we call our initiative RE less than C, renewable electricity cheaper than coal. It reflects a very simple observation today, which for the most part, renewables can't compete straight up with coal. Whatever the renewable energy source, they have a hard time competing on a delivered cents per kilowatt hour basis with coal. Policy has a lot to do to change that. Technology advances have a lot to do to change that. Improve the financing mechanisms, that can help a lot. All those things come together, and we thought we would take a look at that. And so we've been pursuing those very areas, R&D, investment policy, and information. What can information do to help people get a better grasp of the opportunities with renewable energy? We're doing a number of things, but I want to just focus before I wrap up on just one. You hear a lot about solar and wind. I wanted to talk for a second about geothermal. Traditional geothermal, which represents a long-standing, albeit small, contributor to U.S. electricity production, is based on drilling a well down to a pocket of steam or hot water and bringing that hot water up and making electricity. There is an emerging approach to geothermal called EGS. It used to be called hot, dry rock. Essentially, if you drill anywhere deep enough, you get to hot rock. If you can put water down there, heat it up, bring it back up, you can make steam and turn a turbine and make electricity. It is a vast resource. It's base load, unlike solar and wind, which are intermittent. We're big fans of solar and wind, but we also know that if we're going to compete straight up with coal, it would be helpful to have a base load resource like coal. We think there's a cost trajectory there for EGS that could take us down to the 4 or 5 cent level. But we're also the first to admit, even with major studies done by the government, by MIT and others, there's a lot of progress that needs to be made when it comes to this technology. But the fundamentals we think are there, and let me tell you a little bit about what they are. EGS is ultimately applicable almost anywhere in our country and around the world. At 3.5 kilometers, we could be talking tens of thousands of megawatts. At 5 or 6 kilometers, hundreds of thousands, and at 10 kilometers, literally millions of megawatts potential. 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, those are depths that the oil industry drills to. Those are depths that the oil industry knows how to drill to, fracture rock, do a whole sorts of things. The question is, could we do the same and begin to extract heat as we're also extracting oil and natural gas? Can we interest the oil industry in this sort of technology? And we're quite positive on the opportunity with respect to that. So we used a series of Google Maps, Google Earth layers. We did a YouTube video, just whatever we could do to begin to tell the story of EGS to the public, to the government, to industry. So this is a Google map of what the 10-kilometer resource looks like. And anywhere it's yellow, red, purple, there's enough of a heat resource there to be making power. Nevada, the Saudi Arabia of geothermal energy. I mean, look at the numbers. Nevada today, total generation 9,000 megawatts. If you exploited just 2% of the geothermal potential in that state, the EGS potential, the hot, dry rock potential, you're looking at well over 100,000. And at 20%, you're obviously well over 1 million megawatts. It's a huge resource. Texas, one of the issues that the oil industry faces is something they call hot oil. Well, hot oil is oil that's got a lot of heat in it. Duh. You know, you drill down there and there's heat potentially to be extracted. Again, a big opportunity. I don't want to suggest this is technology that we could be using today in large commercial scale. What I will tell you is the Australians have 20 or 30 companies now leading the EGS industry worldwide. They're going full tilt to develop this technology. Several nations in Europe are also exploiting this technology. We're actually playing catch-up in the United States. The good news is there are some companies here. We've made a couple of investments in those companies, and we think there's real opportunity. The other piece of good news is that in the stimulus bill, there's $400 million to do cost-shared demonstration projects across a whole range of geologies in the United States to really accelerate this technology. So Texas is a very interesting place, but what about a place like Maine? Even Maine, look at the potential resource there. I joke that if the big dig in Boston had been vertical instead of horizontal, at $14 billion, we might be powering all of New England. So again, real opportunity here. To wrap up, the dog finally caught the car. You know, we've been talking for decades and decades about finally moving significant dollars into clean energy. The private sector really stepped up beginning 4 or 5 years ago with the emergence of the clean tech industry, with the emergence of clean energy project finance. And just this year, the federal government stepped up with the stimulus package. I had the honor of serving on the transition team, and I tell you, it was one of the most exciting things I've ever done. To sit down and be told, figure out how you could take many tens of billions of dollars and put it to good work to stimulate the economy and at the same time advance clean energy technology across this country and globally. We've been hoping for this for decades. We've talked about this as a vital policy measure, the federal government really putting serious money, and it's finally arrived. So it is unprecedented. You measure it in many ways, but it's clearly more than $50 billion they're going to be spent, with major leverage of private sector investment. That geothermal investment, for example, that I mentioned of $400 million, that's going to be leveraged with at least another $400 million of private sector money. Many mechanisms. You can't talk about a single mechanism when it comes to the stimulus bill. There's R&D funding, loan guarantees, tax credits, borrowing authorities for the Power Marketing Administration. The list goes on in terms of the mechanisms. State block grants, low-income home weatherization, federal building funding for green technologies. And then so many focus areas, smart grid, energy efficiency, renewables, coal, nuclear, it goes on as well. A whole array of opportunities there. And many agencies that have responsibility. At the same time, we've got a very tight timeline. The need, the direction is get this money spent in the next couple of years. And that's a very tall order given the size of the funding that we're looking at, given the need to leverage it with private sector dollars. So I think our challenge today, right now in Washington, among all the things that we're focused on when it comes to clean energy, is how do we get these stimulus dollars spent wisely and spent fast. And I think it's going to take that merger of technologies, policy, and finance. It's going to take all kinds of different people inside and outside of government to really make that happen. I'm pleased with the steps to date that the new administration has taken. The direction they've been given from Congress makes sense. But the next year or two will really show whether, having caught the car, whether we're really going to put this money to good use. I'm optimistic we will, but it's going to take everybody in this room to really make it happen. And if we do make it happen, I think we will finally turn the corner on clean energy in a way that we've long hoped for. Thank you very much.